This video will cover why and how we made all the new molds for the Rock-afire restoration, starting off with the story of Aaron's fiberglass molds. When my friend Leighton and I first saw Aaron's fiberglass molds, we didn't know their original purpose. We figured, like many others in the fanbase, that when Creative Engineering made the original character sculptures, they were only able to make a single mold, since the clay sculpture would be destroyed once the mold was made. This was not the case. Creative Engineering did the right thing and made a fiberglass master mold, which could then be used to make a plug, and from that plug an infinite number of plaster molds could be made. While visiting my friend Tom Devlin in 2019, he mentioned to me his suspicion that the fiberglass molds were in fact masters, given he works in a mold making industry. Once we knew that, Leighton and I began to compare the detail of masks being made in 2019 to masks that were made in 1983, and there was a drastic difference in detail. This is explained in more detail in the Importance of Making Master Molds video I did a while back. We knew that we could make new plugs in these fiberglass master molds, and from there make new plaster molds with all the original detail. On March 7th of 2020, Leighton and I began to search through Aaron's fiberglass molds to see what still existed.
Oh, and by the way, I just want to point out that I am wearing my Harbor Farms colors today. And just in case this tape ever makes it to Dave Harbor's vision.
This was an area we set up to organize the Rock-afire molds. Although Aaron saved all the fiberglass molds from being thrown out in the early 2000s, some molds had been lost long before then. Inventory records show that the fiberglass molds Creative Engineering has now are the same ones they had in 1987, which means any molds they don't have were lost before then. Our first test plugs were made in the two original FATS master molds. The plugs were made of silicone because silicone does not shrink, meaning that the plug would be the exact same size as the original sculpture. Next, a plaster mold was made off of each of the plugs, and after the molds dried, masks were made. The masks turned out perfectly and had all the detail of the original sculpture. And not only that, these two mask iterations did not have a plaster mold previously. So this was the first time these masks were made since probably around 1982. Once I test fitted them on the characters, we began to notice something. The masks seemed larger than usual compared with pictures we had, and what we discovered was that Creative Engineering actually made their plugs of latex, which shrinks, and the fact that we had made silicone plugs meant that the end masks were actually larger than they were supposed to be. Though they were closer to the size of the original sculpture, Creative Engineering did not have access to silicone in the 80s and had to oversculpt to anticipate the initial shrinkage of the plug. So, we had to go back and make the plugs out of latex. With Rolf, the long-fanged and short-fanged iterations both had master molds, so we were able to make new plugs and molds with no problems. This was the same case with Duke, Fats, and Beach Bear, and unfortunately, there was no master mold for Mitzi or Billy Bob. Since their molds didn't exist, we went to great lengths to make new molds, doing things that have never been done before. It required a lot of effort and some luck, but on November 15th of 2020, I was visiting a friend who worked for Creative Engineering. He told me about a project Creative Engineering was working on as part of research and development. Despite claims that Creative Engineering made masks out of latex for planned obsolescence, they had actually been working on masks that would last forever. Using rotocast technology, Creative Engineering was experimenting with making rotocast vinyl masks. Though this never came to fruition, they did make a few test masks, and a few of these masks still exist in private hands. One was owned by my friend. Though the mask was 40 years old, it had held its shape perfectly. It was stiff enough to hold its own shape and had perfect detail. This meant that we could effectively use this mask as a plug and make a new plaster mold with all the original detail. Unfortunately, there was a catch. And unfortunately, I have to cut the coolest part of this video out. Remaking Mitzi's mold was near impossible. We spent over a year perfecting the process that would allow us to give Mitzi a new mold, because there was a seemingly unsolvable issue with the vinyl mask. The process we developed was so cool, and is something that no one has ever done before. I think it could be super helpful to people in the FX and movie industry. This video has actually been done for 3 months, and I haven't released it because I was debating on whether or not it would be safe to. I invested many thousands of dollars into this whole project, and Robbie and Leighton poured their hearts into the project with their time and labor. I can't commend them enough for how much work they put in. But unfortunately, people have already made attempts to undercut the work that we put into the new molds and literally steal from us. Some people seem to think it's morally justified or even righteous to steal from people they don't like. So again, unfortunately I had to cut this section of the video out, which would have comprised most of the video. But in the end, we succeeded with our project and it turned out really well. Once we made the first mask, it was clear that we had succeeded with our goal. Out of the many aspects of the show restoration, this is one of the elements I am the most proud of. And luckily, the result was exactly what we were shooting for. This mask came out perfectly, and I think that this process could be beneficial to anyone else who has an application similar to us. Billy Bob's mold is still in progress, but unfortunately, like Mitzi, it can't be included in this video. A lot of people were shocked to see that when I revealed my show, Looney Bird featured his earlier, less refined mask iteration. Let's go over how we were able to make that happen. After looking through the fiberglass molds, there was no master mold for that mask found, and the plaster mold also seemingly didn't exist. But on August 23rd of 2020, when Leighton and Robbie were looking through the Hard Luck Bears molds in search of Goonie Bird's mold, they found something interesting. When looking at the mold, they noticed that it was not the same as the fiberglass Goonie Bird mold we had found. It was wider and had dimples on the cheeks. Leighton and Robbie made a mask in the mold to see what it was. Once it was done, we realized it must be the elusive wide-beaked Looney Bird mask. It is our belief that the mold was only kept by mistake. It was labeled as Goonie Bird and was sitting in his place. Someone probably didn't recognize the difference and saved the mold by accident. But regardless of what happened, we are very happy that this mold somehow survived. We kept this a secret until the reveal of my Billy Bob and Looney Bird just a few weeks ago, more than 3 years. All in all, this part of the restoration was itself a 3-year process. I'm super happy with the result. Now, all fans who buy masks for their characters will be getting the same quality and detail level they would have gotten in 1983. They are both aesthetically better and will actually last longer because certain features like the creases have improved. This means that masks will be less prone to tearing. Funding and directing this project was very expensive for me, but worth it. I want to thank Aaron Fector for saving all the molds over the years and allowing us to do these projects. And I also want to thank Robbie and Leighton Sanders, who actually made all the new plugs and molds despite the difficulties.